Beidou comes from like cheerful or passionate, and then like Chaos comes from like cool-headed.
And Wezen comes from I'm a Triceratops with guns.
Welcome to Prodigious, a monthly gathering of disembodied voices that on your podcast feed. I can't do it anymore. I can't. Your spooky companion through Digimon Ghost Game.
This week we're discussing episode 13, Executioner, episode 14, Zashiki-Warashi, episode 15, The Fortuneteller's Manor, and episode 16, The Man-Eater's Forest.
You guys okay?
Yeah. It's like, I don't know how long I can do this. I'm Jeff. My pronouns are he, him, and if I were to take Gammamon on an activity to get him over his trauma, I would introduce him to gacha games, because nothing says mental health like another crippling addiction to something completely unrelated.
I am Aster, my pronouns are she, her, and if I had to take an activity for Gammamon to help get over his trauma, I would take him to group therapy because I need it to.
I'm Toya. My pronouns are he, him, and I would take Gammamon to a pizza planet to try and just sweep this under the rug by introducing him to something new, or maybe a Denny's with all the single dads. I don't know.
Just try to find him a new single dad to pass him off to. Well, spoiler policy, like always, we'll be talking about everything included in Ghost Game up through episode 16, including the preview for episode 17, which, if my track record has anything to go by, will have long since aired by the time this comes out, so there won't really be much of a spoiler. But we also, if we talk about anything in other seasons of Digimon, late stage reveals, that kind of thing, we will give you a fair warning before that. But before we dive into these episodes of Ghost Game, what's making us happy in the world of Digimon this month?
I'm happy about, there's new 02 can badges coming out.
Oh.
Yeah, like, okay, the thing is, like, I have this frustration about the fact that, like, okay, I'm gonna salt a little bit here, but as of, like, today, Tamers just got complete selection animation D-Arcs announced, and they're, like, really nice and all that. They skipped there, too. I'm a little salty about that. Because, like, I feel like, you know, if I want to complain about it, you're gonna be like, oh, you have a movie upcoming, so, like, stop complaining. But at the same time, it's like, I wanted the original series. I wanted stuff from the original series. There is not a lot, like, of merch for, like, the actual original series of 02. So, it's definitely, whenever you see something at all, it's just like, oh my god, there's something. Yeah.
So I'm not very familiar with the CSA, Complete Selection Animation Digivice stuff, but for some reason, I assumed that the adventure stuff was tied into Tri, but was there also like OG Adventure?
There was an OG 1999 set with the original voice actors and all that. After that,
I see.
They have completely skipped over 02. It feels a little raw, to be honest. But
yeah. I see it makes sense to be a little bit hesitant, like, okay, if there was a movie thing coming up soon, like, it would make sense to tie into that, but also, yeah. It's fair to feel slighted.
It feels like the McDonald's at home meme. That's really how it feels.
We have 02 at home. I'm surprised that they did go straight to the Tamers set for the complete selection animation Digivices, because, like, merch-wise, it doesn't perform the best of the series. And now I'm like, so are you guys going to do Frontier? Is that going to happen?
Maybe. Well, I mean, CSAs are extremely limited print. I think it's less risky than the actual VPADs, ironically. So, yeah. As for me, everyone's going to be like, are you actually saying this? But it's Meiko, Nishijima, and Himekawa actually making it into the Digimon card game. I was wondering, like, if they're going to do tri-cards, can they at least please do those three? And if this had been, like, 2 boosters ago, I would have said, like, they're, like, at least, like, Himekawa and Nishijima are probably not going to make it, because, like, they're, like, not, quote, main characters, unquote. And then the 02 and Tamers sets came out, and they went, like, ridiculously ham on the Tamer card, so I'm like, okay, at this point, like, they have to. And they did!
I remember, I don't know if this was, like, on a podcast recording, if it was in Discord, but I remember at some point you being like, oh man, like, if they did a 02 set, and if they had Kaiser, Ken, Oikawa, and Wallace. That'd be crazy. And then it was like,
it actually happened.
They were all there.
Yeah, I was actually saying, I think what I said was like almost verbatim. Like, I would like, what I really want is an Oikawa Tamer card, but like, that's only in my dreams. That actually happened. I think it was a really smart move to make Himikawa and Nishijima, especially Black, because Black has generally not had very good support in this game, so they kind of need everything they can get.
Yeah, don't I know it?
Well, I unfortunately don't have any news this month. I've decided Digimon is dead, and I don't care about Digimon anymore.
Oh, no.
So,
did you lose at a tournament?
No. What has actually been keeping me busy and occupying my time is that I've been. I guess this isn't actually news. This isn't actually my pick for this. My pick is null. I don't have a pick, but I've been busy with building a website, a new Digimon card game almost database. I'm hesitant to call it a database because it's not anywhere near as full-featured as several of the other current databases exist out there, but I'm working on it and hopefully going to be able to launch it soon.
Yay!
And the main purpose of it is to make rulings for specific cards easier to browse and find, because there are a bunch of great resources that are archiving that information, which unfortunately there are some official rulings that have only been made in response to emails to Bandai, which is very frustrating. But some of that information is kind of hard to find. So I'm working on a site that is making that easier to find. And I also on this side just kind of thought, while I'm building this, it might be fun to also throw up a page to put like translations of the BT9 leaks. And it's like, this is so much work. So that's what's been occupying my time. And by the time I actually get caught up and have it ready to launch, BT9 will probably be the leak/reveal season will be over, and it won't have mattered. So.
And now you see why I don't do this anymore, Jeff.
Yeah, the thing is, if I had been doing it since it actually started, it would have been fine. But in my head, I was like, it just started recently. And it's like, wait, no, there's been 3 to 4 weeks of stuff to catch up on. And yeah, there's a lot to get to. So I might scrap that part of it and just make it a English side of the fandom thing first, and then eventually add reveals for the next spoiler reveal season. But yeah, I've been thinking of Digimon 24/7, and so
nothing is new anymore.
Right, I've just been like living in card announcement news, so it's like, what is news anymore? I don't even know.
And in the alternate universe where Sonic actually got my internet installed on time, your current database would just be hosted on Digimon Card Network.
I don't want to touch WordPress.
Oh yeah, Jeff, if you slip up for 2 months, you're dead. No pressure. That's the way it feels like all the time. Sometimes just if you slip up for a week, you feel dead.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's time to ghost up our games to face what we've been avoiding.
Remember when we said last episode that like it would be really funny if like Toei did something to completely like to like spit in the face of everything we were talking about one episode later?
Yeah.
So of course we jinxed it.
Yeah, so episode 13, Executioner.
Lucky number 13.
Yeah, just a sweet, wholesome episode. We start off the episode with Gammamon excitedly eating chocolate from Pokemon. They talk about, I'm just for no reason thinking back to last podcast episode we recorded, and we were like, don't worry, Clockmons and Pokemons care now. And, that's what this episode's all about, is Pokemon being a great figure for everyone, for the community, who will never get stabbed in the back with a knife. So yeah, this episode's all about an executioner out on the town counting in German and killing a bunch of Digimon. They semi-accidentally, but also semi-intentionally lure the Digimon turns out to be Sealgemon by Jellymon going off on her own. And then to defend Gammamon, Pokemon jumps in the way of a knife and dies, and Gammamon Dark evolves into GulusGammamon from the tragedy in front of his eyes that he clearly does not know how to process.
Yeah.
This was certainly an episode.
I'm one for psychological horror, right? Like, I'm not someone like who likes, edgy dark stuff just for the sake of it, right? And I am glad that, because the thing was, so many of us have seen quite a few dark evolutions in the franchise, and we're all like used to like the whole like berserker, angry rampaging archetype. Mm-hmm. There are certain tropes we have come to associate. They don't actually happen as often as people think they do, but we do have certain tropes we associate with it. But it is definitely a first where we have one that talks. very lucidly, and that actually made it scarier. And I am glad that so many people acknowledged that, because there was so much more to unpack from that implication.
The fact that Gulus was trying to prove a point in this episode,
A point that is arguably correct.
yeah.
Yeah, there's so much about the way this evolution was handled that is, it's like taking all the familiar components of dark evolutions that we're used to, but like mixing it up in new ways that make it really interesting. The fact that it is, not spurred on by Hiro
In fact,
at all.
It's the opposite, in fact, because like Hiro apparently has completely disconnected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's so many things I think are so cool about this episode and the evolution, but one of the things that I think has been, like apparent since we had the reveals of what his 4 forms were going to be, and it was clear that Gamma in Gammon's name was reference to the RGB color triangle, and how Gulus was black, and in the RGB color space, basically, if you have 100% of all 3 colors, then you make white. Right. And if you have 0% of all 3 colors, then you make black.
Right.
And in the evolution sequence, when GulusGammamon forms, the 3 red, green, and blue colored DNA strands disappear, and he turns into black. And it's like, but also like as a metaphor for, like, if Gammon's evolutions, which is kind of a stretch at what we've been given information-wise in the story so far, but I've been kind of viewing them as like a metaphor for what Gammon's future could be like if Hiro guided him along that path. It's like each one of Beto, Wezen, and Kaus represent a future possibility, and Gulus is like if Hiro was not there to guide him at all.
Right. Possibly.
It's kind of a stretch given what we've seen, but like it feels like he was not there to help Gammamon, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
About that, Jeff, like this is the thing that was running through my head as I was watching the episode, that because it's the lack of Hiro's presence that is like kind of it's on Gulus's mind, actually, the fact that Hiro like gets his attack name streamed into his head and then doesn't call it out.
Yeah.
Is this Gammamon's original personality, like before meeting Hiro?
See, I was thinking about, because that was actually, like, Esther mentioned that theory last time we recorded, and after seeing this episode, I'm like, oh no, I hope not. Like, it scares me now.
That's the thing. Like, I'm feeling that was like when I first watched the episode, especially because he was saying like I've been feeling so cramped in here. It does almost feel like you sealed Gulus into the baby, right? But then the more I started watching it, the more I wasn't so sure, because well, a couple things, but like if you actually like spend time really sitting down and like unpacking like Gulus's motives and what he does, a lot of it is really what Gammamon and Hiro have been doing already, but like with a much more like cynical or sadistic twist to it. Like the first thing he does is like he picks him up and starts interrogating on like, what is your motive? What is like, questioning things like Hiro does a lot, right? And then, the way he looks kind of disappointed that Hiro won't go along with him. It's like, the thing is, it's not just that he's like frustrated over Hiro's actions. It's like he's trying to teach Hiro something. He's like, he wants Hiro to internalize the message. And then finally, this took me a couple of watches to realize, but when he turns back to everybody and you see like him ready and attack, and he starts to attack everybody, right, to like prove that it's like kill or be killed, right? And so he initially aimed at everybody who is not Hiro. Then Hiro stepped in, and then the last thing he said before he tried to do the attack was move out of the way. So he did not want to hit Hiro. He wanted to hit everybody else, but for some reason he wants to teach Hiro this lesson, and he does not want to actually attack Hiro despite all that, which is interesting, I think.
He reminds me of Forte from Rockman XA, Mega Man Battle Network base.
It's like, it's a dark evolution, but it's like more like, in this case, the dark rather than completely evil is more like extremely cynical, like anti-heroic.
Anti-hero? Huh?
Oh boy.
Huh?
There's just so much. I'm like, where to even start?
Yeah. It's like, there's a lot to unpack. It's just like, yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, just the idea of Gulus's attack streaming into Hiro's brain and it causing him pain is a really cool evolution of the concept that we've seen so far. It does, I don't know, call to mind some questions for me where like they only get that little animation sequence when it's the first attack, when it's the first named, when it's the first instance of that named attack. But it makes me wonder, like, is the same kind of like thing happening each time they do it without us seeing the animation sequence?
That's what I figured the whole time. So,
so I guess it's like it hasn't been explicitly spelled out in the narrative, but I think we can assume it's like they have some kind of a psychic connection, and when the Digimon like has the instinct to do a thing, there's some kind of connection where the kid calling it out helps the Digimon do it.
Yeah.
And clearly it's not necessary because he can just do it anyway.
I was quite surprised, like, when they said in the profile that we got, like, which we were able to read the profile for a long time because of the Vital Bracelet Lab app, that it said that it kills the opponent with pinpoint accuracy. That was more correct than I thought.
Yeah.
It was pretty precise there.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, so I in regards to the theory of Gulus being the original form before like Hokuto, Hero's dad, like did something to like Gammamon-ify him, I am bummed by that possibility just because like it seems like a less interesting possibility to me because like there's something about having a like sweet and innocent friend who like one day you wake up and they've become this like meaner, cynical, edgier version that like it feels so resonant and terrifying to me. And maybe part of it is just that like when I was a kid, I have a vivid memory of in middle school having a best friend who was like, you know, we were the loser nerd kids who didn't do drugs or do anything cool or parties or anything like that. And I had a dream where the friend became Spike from Buffy and was like doing cigarettes and drugs and stuff. And I was like, oh no, oh no, what do I do now? And like, that's what this like idea of Gammamon just like snap and then becomes GulusGammamon feels like to me. And it feels so terrifying. So if it turns out to be like, oh no, that's the original form and like the narrative becomes more about like, which is the real, quote unquote, real one, that seems less interesting to me than like this fear that like this could be the possibility.
I don't think either is like mutually exclusive though. Like I don't think so far I've never gotten the impression that the series itself wants to convince you that you should consider them two separate things. Because like you even get like in the later episodes you start like seeing like especially Ruri and Kiyoshiro is like kind of like don't talk about that one, like that we don't talk about that one, we're not going to think about that one, you don't even want to see that one. In like when we get all the way down to 16, like Hiro is like counting off the evolutions and he is very like fine with counting Gulus in there. And the other two are like, don't talk about that one. It's like those two will not acknowledge them as the same thing, but Hiro is not so sure about that.
Right. The hit Disney song, we don't talk about Gulus. No.
So I don't think it's a mutually exclusive interpretation. Like it's what he was before, it's not what he is now, but you know, you can always still go back to that if you want. And that's always still going to be a part of it, probably. I don't think it's like mutually exclusive, yeah.
If this is the personality that Gammamon had before encountering Hero's dad, like I think it would be inside of what Digimon's mythos has established about Digimon lifespans and the fact that each one is a different individual. As they like reincarnate, they come back, but they're not exactly the same as they used to be, which I think also ties into the theme surrounding Bokomon's death here.
Which I love that I feel like they made that explicit in a way that I'm not used to Digimon seasons usually doing. I still kind of harbor some lingering frustration with how that's been handled in previous seasons where like, you know, like, and maybe this is information being lost in the transition to the dub, but like Patamon being the first Digimon that we see come back in Adventure and retaining all of the memories and it not really being clear if that was like an exception or if that was the norm. And I feel like most seasons have been kind of vague about that when there is reincarnation. Like in Frontier, does the Patamon that comes back in Frontier remember things from Seraphimon's life?
I mean, Savers was not vague about it at all. That's like probably the only one that wasn't vague about that in the slightest.
I don't remember.
By default, they're supposed to lose all their memories, but the ones that are partnered to humans, because of the influence of humans, is such a like wild card that may go against that. That was the theme they had on that one.
The Frontier reincarnation, the character did not recall anything specific. Although they did have, there was a scene that implied they had some kind of cross-life resonance because they kind of recognized and were friendly to the reincarnations of the other two holy Digimon in that one.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I forgot that in Savers, there's the whole, like, when this stuff happens, which is kind of a big enough spoiler that I don't want to mention explicitly, but when there is a Digimon that goes through a revival process, I think they do explicitly talk about what is the norm and what is the exception.
I mean, they haven't actually said that, like, memories are involved on this one, but we're kind of assuming it because that's usually what that means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was also, like, I didn't really register for me until the second time I watched it that like I think of Pokemon in my mind, and like we all seeing this Pokemon thought of the Frontier Pokemon, right?
Yeah.
Who visually, iconically has a Digi-Egg in his little fanny pocket thing, and it's like he became the Digi-Egg.
Yeah, enjoy the irony.
Very interesting choice.
I was trying to remember if V-Tamer clarified the reincarnation thing, but it's been a while. I should give that a reread. What I do remember from that is that like that was the only series where deleting a Digimon and killing it were different things.
Oh.
Because like Neo in that had a whole thing where when he was back in the real world training his virtual pets, he would delete them to punish the ones that failed too much and to select for the strongest partner.
Savers kind of had that distinction because, like, the Digimon themselves were not too miffed about the idea of losing memories. Like, that seemed to be like a normal part of their society. But then Kurata came and started committing genocide with like permakill Gizmon, and that was considered like crossing the line by all parties involved.
But it was different even in V-Tamer because like that happens later. But in the backstory with Neo deleting his V-Pets, that didn't kill them the way that Kurata deleting Digimon killed them. That, like, sent them to some kind of recycle bin, I think, because, like, the Greymon that he deleted, like, came back and tried to get stronger by remodeling itself.
Well, I think, as we know in this episode, Pokemon didn't die. Pokemon went to the Shadow Realm.
Yes.
Where he is totally fine.
So you just need to summon him back from the trash deck, right?
Yeah.
He evacuated just in time before they blew up the whole city.
It's time for all of us to change to purple, I guess.
What is... I'm trying to remember. There's a recent card that, like, tries... it's Omegamon Merciful Mode that punishes purple by actually taking things out of the trash, and it's like... interesting game mechanics.
Welcome to Narukami. You could have experienced this several years ago if only you played Cardfight Vanguard.
More like Cardfight...
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a pun. Okay, other details about this episode. I love that... I think this is more of a thing in Japanese pop culture than it is in our, at least English-based pop culture, but like one of the signs of being a chuuni is thinking that German name sounds really cool. So the fact that Kyoshiro is the one who recognizes German, I was like, this is perfect. Yes, exactly. He would.
Yeah. Well, also he is educated, so.
Right. He also went to school in a Western country and stuff. So like it fits on multiple levels. Also just like the way that, I mean, this hits harder once you know what happens in the episode, but like in the beginning of the episode when they're talking about, like when they're speculating that like the counting that Digimon is doing means that he's killed almost 1,000 Digimon, and Gammamon is just like, oh, counting, I can count, I can do 1, 2, 3, and it's like, he really is a toddler. Oh my god. The toddler writing is so good.
Yes, it is. It really brings brevity to the series. It alleviates things.
I wonder if somebody like just had a kid recently and like they're like using the kid as reference.
Production babies. I want them in the credits.
Oh, one thing I was kind of curious how you guys felt about this was that the fact that they bring up the Selection D lore behind Digimon and all that stuff, that feels like the kind of thing that like has always existed in the null canon Digimon lore, but like, will it feel frustrating and unsatisfying if that doesn't, like if we don't meet that organization and like find out like a higher purpose or like a higher, like if that doesn't connect into anything else? Because I don't know how I'll feel.
It's like the equivalent to the Digimon Analyzer segments, which is weird because we have Digimon Analyzer segments where they're still talking about the features of the Digimon. But I would not like personally feel dissatisfied if they like did not follow up on this at some point, because I think it's just talking about aspects of the Digimon and what type of Digimon it is, rather than trying to foreshadow like, oh, we're going to meet everybody eventually.
Right. And I think one of the things that makes it so poignant and like emotional an episode is that there isn't a big grander reason for it. It's just one Digimon who wants a kill count, and it's like, and that's the only reason. That's sick.
I think the English dub probably took a lot of these out, but Adventure actually used to do this a lot. And I think it was because it was an unproven IP at the time. They needed to like, tie in. They needed to tie in with Bandai much harder than they used to, and like they were showing a lot of these Digimon on the screen for the first time like ever, and yeah, they would like insert just like random lore bits when like discussing them, and it would not like become relevant ever, but like they want you to know about the monsters so that you'll buy toys of the monsters. So they want to introduce you a little like extra to it. So that was something that has been done like since, like that was mostly done in, I think, the original Adventure. They kind of cut it out by Zero 2, but like yeah, the original Adventure did this a lot.
And I feel like the thing that, like, if we're actually trying to predict how much this will tie into things, the fact that there is the Black Agumon at the end.
Yeah.
Watching over things means there is some loose thread that hasn't been tied up about this, and whether that ties into whatever Selection D is,
Right.
might not be relevant, but there's something that hasn't been finished.
By the way, I want to ask, like, you guys and everybody listening to this podcast right now, you know how there's been Blacktailmon showing up, like, delivering and carrying, like, as a courier service, right?
Yeah.
Do you think there's only one Blacktailmon, or do you think there's a whole, like, service of, like, different Blacktailmon who, like, are, like, a whole, like, crowd of them?
I think there is an army, but they are all pretending to be the same individual.
That is an interesting possibility I hadn't considered before.
Because I think if you have a courier service, you know, you should have a whole service.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to have a service that's based on one single carrier, a courier. But I love how, we have enigmatic figures in the background, Blacktailmon and Black Agumon. It's like, that's the kind of wink and nod to adventure that I love.
It's dark and goth adventure now.
Well, I was a sucker for in Frontier having the like winks and nods to adventure.
Yeah. I like subtle little things like that. Like the fact that Kiyoshida has pineapple computers.
Oh yeah.
That's still like every so often you see a little adventure reference like that. Like that kind of little thing I'm like totally cool with.
It stood out to me that this episode is like extremely Digimon focused to the point that Sealsgermon's only targets are Digimon, and I was just thinking like this could be infinitely worse if he was killing humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the only complaint I have with this episode is that for a moment when Gulus was tearing through the pseudo-digital world, that what I thought was happening was that he was actually like tearing a hole into the digital world, and that it was like launching, there being some bigger intrigue to like, not him actually escaping the digital world, but like there being some kind of rift to the digital world now. So when I realized like, oh no, it's just he's tearing the hole out to the rest of the human world.
Oh, I would have eaten that up.
Yeah, I can't really fault the episode for it. The fact that it like made me think there was an even cooler idea happening.
I was totally on board for the idea that like his response to Hiro being all wishy-washy would be to open the way into the digital world and force them all in and be like, all right, here's a world where it is kill or be killed.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Let's see how you do now.
Yeah. Also, when Gulus was talking, it was when I really heard oh god, I forgot the Seiyu's name, but
So it's Sawashiro Miyuki.
yeah, it was like it's if Catalina was evil. And
Catalina was evil. Yeah.
The laughter was really good.
She's been in like a ton of like roles, so like it's interesting seeing the variety coming out of her with all the different Gammamon forms, because like other than Gulus is actually the one I'm most familiar with, but other than Gulus, like these are some different tones I'm not very used to seeing from her.
I mean, we've said it before, but like Gulus's personality is just it's so like surprising and refreshing in a completely unfun kind of way. Like it's a new kind of antagonist, if you can really call it an antagonist. Like just cynical and like an edgy teenager.
He's a frenemy. He's on Hiro's side. He's also a very bad person.
Yeah, this whole show is just going to be about toxic friendships and how you should really cut people out of your life.
Oh no,
you should not be friends with Batman. Okay, he's like
okay.
I
didn't know we were canceling Bruce Wayne live on air.
Oh no. Okay.
Just a final thought is that so this show, it has the 9 a.m. time slot, right?
Yes.
So like imagine you're like 8 years old or something and you get to the end of this episode and it's just a baby crying and then that's your 9 a.m.
Hey, you know, Toei has a history of this, you know, because like this was like one of the first episodes. This was the first episode to air in the new year, right?
Yeah.
And like there was a really famous incident in Kamen Rider Exade where they had an episode on Christmas and they killed a major character on Christmas. Actually got a lot of controversy from the parents because like, what are you doing like for the kids on Christmas? You killed a character.
Toei ruins Christmas.
Yeah, it turns out the Calendarmon episode of Batman was based on historical events. Toei did. They ruined Christmas. Well, anyway, next episode 14, Zashiki-Warashi.
It's Zashiki-Warashi.
Yeah, I was not emphasizing correctly.
I am impressed that they did not translate this at all and just ran with it without explanation.
Because it is a specific real yokai. I noticed they don't translate it when it's like a very specific like Japanese yokai or something else, I guess. Like the Kamaitachi.
I can see how this would have been a particularly hard thing to translate, especially because like, you know, like translating the words literally don't like tatami mat room boy. No, I mean, no. And yeah, there's a lot of culture involved, but also because it seems like the kind of yokai and myth that is not like known to everyone. is my impression.
No.
That it's like fairly local to the region. And so I think the episode did, like the point of the episode in the writing itself was that it was supposed to explain what this myth was.
Yeah, and they did, so.
Yeah.
Koemon is voiced by, I think this was a lot of people know this by now, but Koemon was voiced by Tsumura Makoto, who plays Takato in Tamers. And he really sounded like Takato. And it's really weird when you, like, this character is, like, constantly, like saying this, like, really creepy, like, asonde, but it's in Takato's voice. Like... Yeah, Takato could have been really scary back in Tamers, couldn't he?
The ghost of Digimon Tamers comes back to haunt us.
It turns out it wasn't actually a yokai or a Digimon. It was just someone left their new Tamers CSA Digivice in the corner somewhere.
It was just Takato.
It was low on batteries.
He sounded unnervingly like Takato. Like, it was like I was getting whiplash, like, while watching the whole thing. I think it was a little too distracting on my part, but... Oh my god.
Oh, I love how in the beginning of the episode, they're at the hotel, and Kiyosho just freaks out hearing a piano. It's just really, like, there's nothing supernatural. They're just in a lobby, and she's playing on the piano, and he's like, oh my god, is it the Zashiki-Warashi?
That is such a mood, though, when you know how to play piano and you've been, like, practicing for a really long time, and then, like, you walk into a place, like a mall that has a piano, you just, like, urge to, like, sit down and start playing happens.
There's one, I don't know, tunnel hallway in LAX where, like, every time I walked through the tunnel, it's like a tunnel with, like, there's like one or two people I ever see, but there's a piano, and there's always someone at the piano, and I'm like, is someone paid to sit at this piano, or this empty hallway, someo's always at this piano?
No, that's just one of the LAX ghosts. They're everywhere.
Oh, yeah. The LAX Warashi.
So many people die there, it's terrible.
Wait, is that true?
No.
Okay. LAX is a scary place, I don't know.
I'm just screwing with you. I don't know if anybody's died at LAX. I assume so. It's an airport.
I mean, I don't think there's going to be any good fortune spirits in LAX.
It's the world's worst airport, let me clarify. I've been through there more times than I ever want to. Never go through LAX if you can avoid it.
Unless you're in the Bay Area and want cheaper flights to Japan, because buying tickets from LAX is much cheaper than flying from the Bay Area.
Yeah.
You know what's a great airport? San Diego. Nobody uses it.
Well, this was I thought a really great, I don't want to say light episode, but it was light compared to last episode, and actually dealt with the emotional fallout of Gammamon not understanding.
Yeah, and it still felt connected to the previous episode. It was still dealing with the same themes.
They didn't just move on like nothing happened. They were, like, thinking about, like, what to do. How do you, like, move on from that, basically?
I was disappointed Granny was alive, though.
Okay, so on that note, is she? Because, okay, there are several things that I, like... Because when I first watched it, I assumed that, she's definitely alive. But then I'm like, wait, okay. She could have written that note and been lying because she was about to die. Also, the staff could have written that note to appease the Zashiki-Warashi after she passed.
Or it could be more benign. Like, that could have been the truth when she initially wrote the note, but how many years ago was that?
Oh, jeez. Yeah, so...
I didn't like that they just accepted it at face value in universe, though, because I feel like what they're pushing for is that, especially with Gammamon having to accept Bokomon's death, it's like, it's very difficult for a kid to have that confrontation and realization of mortality, but also it's not good to deflect from or hide from it when you can't anymore.
Yeah, I kind of wondered though if it was like on kind of a meta level that, like, this is an episode about teaching Gammamon to move on and accept that Pokemon's not there anymore. But, like, it's still a kids show and these are still kids. And, like, the idea of human death is still a little bit like, ooh, so, like...
Well, I think it's kind of like a step-by-step process. Like, first, let's talk about accepting the concept of somebody going away and not coming back for at least a very long time, you know? Because they have tried to explain to Gammamon a couple times already, like, the one you know is not coming back anymore.
Yeah.
And it hasn't gone through his head, even though they did actually try. So it's not like they're intentionally trying to, like, shy away from it per se, but it's just kind of like, how do I explain this in a way that this toddler understands? Because, you know, it's very difficult to get it through his head.
Yeah, I saw some people when this episode aired kind of, I guess, surprised because the Dark Evolution last episode was caused by his grief, that they were surprised that Gammamon, I thought Gammamon Dark Evolved because he didn't know, or because he knew that Pokemon was gone, and so the fact that he doesn't know the Pokemon's gone now doesn't really fit. And I'm like, Interact with a toddler. This is very consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that they like some things get ingrained in their skull permanently that you like, how do you remember the detail? And other things are like completely left their head the next day.
Also, trauma does things to you.
Yeah.
Like, you start, like, intentionally, selectively forgetting things because you don't want to deal with it.
And to what degree he actually understands what's happening in front of him in like a cognitive way it's kind of in question given his mindset at this point, because like you might like intuitively Gammamon can see Pokemon disappear in front of him. Like he can see the sparkles, he can see his body going away, he can tell he's not there anymore, but he doesn't necessarily know what that means permanently.
I mean, this is the same one where, like, they were talking about, like, Sealsdramon racking up a kill count, and he goes, I can count too!
Yeah.
So, we're talking about this kind of toddler.
Can count to 3.
The sad thing is that Gammamon can also count his kill count up to 1 now, because he did get 1 kill.
I was thinking that this episode might have... It was edging towards, like, Granny could see Koemon because he's a ghost, and she was close to becoming a ghost herself because he wasn't materialized yet at that point.
I think that was the vibe still.
I think that was a vibe, yeah. That was the impression I got from it.
Yeah, because I saw some people also complain that, like, why, if he, according to Pokemon's explanation, like, there shouldn't be a form where he's visible to only one person. But I'm like, no, because she's old. Like, that makes sense to me.
I've never seen that, like, codified in a specific trope anywhere that like people identified, but it's definitely something that like old people in fiction can see ghosts.
It's a trope. Like those who are about to cross over into the other world start like becoming like able to more sensitive to the things that come from it. Kind of like trope. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like it ties into the fact that, like, I always thought it was, like, it's both people at a very old age and a very young age. They're, like, that's also why, like, people think that babies can see ghosts and stuff. And I think that ties into why Digimon, like, in every incarnation of Digimon, like, they're partnering with kids because they're younger and more, I don't know, in tune with that kind of stuff.
It's a staple of fantasy that, like, the children are the ones who, like, are most open-minded towards the magic. Therefore, they are the ones who can accept the magic and see the magic.
Yeah. Another thing, but I wonder if that was what they were kind of going for with Ganai, though, like, he's kind of like, I mean, he wasn't actually a human or Digimon entity or whatever, but still, like, that kind of, like, visual of someone who's old enough to have been on the opposite end of the spectrum.
We also get an update on Hiro's dad.
Yeah.
So he's not, apparently he is still making things and sending them over. So it's not like he got, like, kidnapped and trapped in sealed in a thing. It sounds like he's still actively producing those like hologram videos and sending them over to his son.
The fact that Hiro is exasperated with him at this point instead of concerned.
I have a lot of questions about that relationship there, but yeah.
I love how Ruli was like, so this is basically just a 3D album to brag to his son?
Yeah.
And, yep. Yeah, she's right.
She's right. She's completely right.
He's a Facebook dad.
He was just like, I almost got eaten by a Digimon yesterday with like no concern whatsoever. Goodness.
I mean, it turns out if you are in the desert and you fall into a Sarlacc pit, you might be dead to the franchise for several decades, but then you'll come back with the Disney Plus show. So.
And it basically confirms he is like hiring these like black tailmon, right?
Yeah.
Part-time tailmon.
I love how it just like scrams the moment it's done with the package and just doesn't say anything, just like
Tailmon
did
out.
my job. I'm out of here. But then I guess that's accurate to the actual Uber Eats experience, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the delivery Digimon. It goes to the door, takes a picture, walks away.
Oh, yeah. I, for some reason, like, in the emotional climax of the episode, when the fireworks are going off, and it's like, part of me was like, I don't think throwing a lasso and hitting with fire would make a firework, but whatever. I guess I'll accept that. It just hit me that, like, I don't know, it just caught up to me that, like, wait, we have, like, a weekly Digimon series that is about, like, emotional catharsis and, like, emotional journeys and fallout of emotional experiences. And it's like, it's not just beating up a new random Digimon of the week. And this one didn't even have a Digimon battle.
Yeah, they didn't even have a fight.
It still felt great.
There is a conflict. There was not a fight.
Yeah, I guess technically Gammamon did use his attack on Koemon at one point.
How would Colon Taichi have solved this?
Oh, no.
Dun 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 dun.
Oh my god.
I mean, to be fair, that is also what Hiro did. Gammamon evolve, and we're just gonna make fireworks. Kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah, but Taichi would have murdered Koemon.
Yeah, true.
You killed Takato.
He needs his body count.
Oh, no.
Somebody go through Colon and total everybody's body counts, please.
Oh, no.
Count them one by one. All of the individual Algomon, too.
That means going through colon again.
Well, next episode 15, Fortuneteller's Manor, really is investigating a mysterious fortune teller that appears in random locations in the city that turn out aren't that random because they form and here I'm using the biggest air quotes possible, quote unquote circle, and they find the manor, and it turns out Phallusmon is turning people into statues.
Phallusmon?
Oh no.
You know, like maybe it's because I know my literature and stuff, but like when you have somebody naming themselves Mephisto, you back the hell away.
Yeah, like I mean, Mephisto is not a endearing name of a fortune teller to be attracted to, I feel.
Mephisto-san-san.
Yeah, there was one in Cyber Sleuth, Mephisto-san-san.
Okay, here's my biggest issue with this episode. Like, what is up with these titles and Manor? Like, there was also the Punkpon episode that had Manor in it, and I'm like, I guess this is like a spooky horror vibe that like horror stories are obsessed with manors, but like this was a tent. It's not a manor. Well, yeah, this was not a circle. That's my biggest frustration.
Yeah, it was a missed opportunity that like it was a circle and not a pentagram or something.
Part of me wonders if like they wrote the episode assuming they could draw a pentagram, and then they were like, this might get dubbed overseas, maybe we shouldn't do a pentagram.
Well, yeah, didn't we run into problems with the Tamers? And there's even a joke that the reason Hunters wasn't dubbed was because of this.
Oh yeah, I forgot Phallusmon was in Hunters.
Sort of kind of a circle within the range that you could say within an urbanized city.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I think of these 4 episodes, this one is the weakest.
Yeah.
Which is weird because like the premise should be super interesting with this guy. Like,
it's a cool premise.
The twisted wish granting, except it was just, hey, you're a statue. Hey, you're a statue.
Yeah, I like Monkey's Paw stuff, you know?
I granted your wish, you're a statue. Yeah. I thought it was gonna be like the first one would be something like I wanted to be beautiful forever or something, but no, he's just turning people into statues.
It's Medusa now. Yeah, that was a little weird. It was like I said, I'm especially, you know, if you know, like, you know, the etymology of Mephistopheles, like you're expecting something more along the lines of like Monkey's Paw, or like...
He even talks about granting wishes, but he doesn't actually, like when he says he's going to grant his own wish, I'm like, okay, so you're going to stone yourself?
that would be okay. I mean, the other elephant in the room is that this episode was, the resolution is like one of the worst resolutions, in that I think it makes sense that he chooses to leave because he doesn't want to deal with these kids, which I think that part of it was totally fair. The fact that the kids are totally okay with that and aren't concerned at all, that's like, what are these kids doing? But if instead he turned himself to stone because of his own, like hubris. He wished it, his own hubris, he like granted his own wish, and it's like, okay, that would have been a great ending.
I think the intended implication was actually because they all observed that they were actually no match for him. But they didn't have enough time at the end of the episode to like really drive that home.
Yeah, it would have been more obvious, like if he had actually injured one of them to the point they couldn't fight.
Yeah, like I did get the impression that the implication was that like they realized that they were like on the losing side inevitably, because you had that whole thing about like their attacks did not even leave a single scratch. But,
yeah, like I guess I took that conclusion for granted at the beginning of the fight, because I was like, I mean, he's a level higher than they are. Like, like the precedent for even 3 champions or adults taking down 1 ultimate or perfect is pretty unprecedented. So like, it's probably not going to happen. And then, so I didn't like mind too much, but like, yeah, it should have been explained better. And it fits into a trend of Ghost Game episodes ending kind of abruptly and without enough narrative explanation for why it was resolved.
Yeah, I get the impression that like they do know what they're doing, but unfortunately, because they have to end it so quickly, like with only like 3 minutes left in the episode, like you have to pick up on like the really little things like that if you want to get what they're going for. Especially because, you know, these last 4 episodes have indicated that a lot of those like really tiny things I caught on in the earlier episodes did actually mean what I thought they did.
Yeah.
But they were so quick that it was like very easy to doubt it. And then when you look at like where it's taken it, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, no, they knew what they were doing. They deliberately did that, and they did want your attention on that. But unfortunately, because of like pacing issues, it did not come out quite as clearly as it probably should have.
I do appreciate that they're pocketing all these villains for later, which is it's much better than like being one and done with everybody. I can't say, oh, here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on.
As iconic as that is.
You know, and you know, that is the thing. Like, this particular block of episodes is indicating that like the part when they are letting them go, they are increasingly ending up with their backs against the wall now. Like, it is very obvious that like the fact that like this they're like letting them off the hook is definitely becoming a bigger problem.
Yeah, I feel like in the last episode, that was the only one where I felt like the battle actually earned the we barely escaped by like inflicting this one wound, and that's all we could do.
Yeah.
But this one, it seems so. This is the most obviously malicious character that they've let slide, and it seems like this very easily could be the big bad or lead into the big bad in some way. And so it, I don't know. I guess I just considering how much like we've gotten to explore the emotional fallout of GulusGammamon, which I'm not saying we shouldn't have. Like that's great, but like the fact that you let Satan go off and like terrorize the town. Presumably, like I feel like that should weigh on the reminds later as well. But I don't know. Like at this point, it's like I don't know. It's reminding me of like having unfinished projects. It's like you still have Elder Weedmon out there who can literally cause the end of the world. You have Phyllismon who wants to take down the entire city. He wants to take over the world. You have we'll get to Juremon. Like the number of villains that are out there and like have sworn vengeance on you. It's like. This is making me nervous and anxious.
Yeah.
Hey, they're Japanese. Satan is just a guy to them.
Oh my god.
Well, you know, I like how we know he's evil because he has 666 tattooed on his face. Like, we wouldn't have known otherwise.
How do we feel about Pants Rabbit number I've lost count now?
Pants Rabbit. I mean, isn't he only like the third torso? I don't know. I'm not counting.
Well, they put pants on Galgomon. Teruremon also has a whole outfit.
I didn't even know who Teruremon was until the card game, so.
Jeff, for shame. You are a casual.
It's true.
I'm still trying to figure out the etymology of Simbar and Gonomon, and we still haven't figured this out yet.
You and every other wiki editor in the world. No one knows. I don't even know if maybe Toei doesn't know.
Well,
so the controversy here is that the text that's used in the opening contradicts the official Toei subtitles, so yeah, that's not great. I have recently what's the title of Doctor Strangelove? How I learned to
love the bomb?
Isn't there more to it? Oh yeah. So how I learned to stop worrying and love Bandai's localization is just the seeing people play the Digimon card game who aren't anime obsessive or Japanese localization enthusiasts who just are like, oh yeah, Savior Hakumon? That's obviously its name. Dan Devamon? Obviously the name. Who don't like question or think about it or worry about it or complain about it at all. I'm like, oh, I guess to most people it's not absurd to see Dan Devamon on a card. Like, I don't know. It's sobering.
I think video game players tend to complain more about it than like card game players, I guess.
I mean, the people at my old card shop were making Dirty Dan jokes. Just the same as we were.
Yeah. I mean, I still think it's fair to be upset and frustrated when they can't even be consistent within the same piece of media. But
yeah,
we still haven't gotten to. Oh, is it one of the ultimates/perfects that is Greek mythology names?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We won't spoil that.
Which it could be two different names that both fit.
Yeah. Oh, this is the day in the life of being a Digimon fan. What are the names? We'll never know.
Is Namon a rabbit? Namon has pants too.
Sure. I don't know.
Does Peter Rabbit have pants? Are these all references to Peter Rabbit?
My cousin is obsessed with that.
He's wearing like in this case, they're like pirate pants almost.
Okay.
Gonna join Captain Hook's crew.
Captain Jack Sparrow's pants? Wait, Peter Rabbit does not have pants. Peter Rabbit has everything except pants.
Peter Rabbit has a waistcoat, right?
Okay.
I guess that's what you call it.
Cutemon does not wear pants. There's one rabbit in Digimon with no pants.
Okay, but honest thoughts about Angoramon. I find it very odd seeing like I've kind of like associated the wise sage advice from Angoramon coming from this like particular body shape. So then when he is as Simba Angoramon and says wise things, and I'm like, who are you? Why are you talking? You don't do anything. It's like if Uncle Iroh like I don't know, became Zuko and then started saying wise Iroh things, and I was like, no.
I mean, like, it's definitely kind of weird where we have an evolution that is actually smaller than the evolution that came before it.
Yeah.
That doesn't usually happen.
This is like the reverse of what happened to Renamon. Instead of getting, like, smaller and more agile, or, I mean, instead of starting smaller and more agile, becoming smaller and more agile, because Renamon had the whole fluffing out into Cubimon, got taken to the groomers.
Yeah, followed the Vulpix evolution line. Bulldozer and Gormon was great. I like that form better than Simba and Gormon.
Bulldozer.
Bulldozer and Gormon. I guess was that a bulldozer? What is that?
No, it was like a forklift or
yeah,
it was something like that.
Okay,
Yeah, it was like a forklift.
Well, I'd like to see bulldozer as well.
And Gormon learning how to drive.
Yeah. I also, the writing in this, the fact that it's taken Simba and Gorman 15 episodes to show up is pretty egregious, especially in light of so when episode 13 aired and people made reference to the fact that a lot of stuff happens to go down around episode 13 of Digimon series, and that's when Angemon dies in Adventure. And it made me realize that oh wait, that's Patamon not evolving to Angemon felt like such a late stage thing, and it still happened 2 episodes before Angoramon evolved.
Well, I mean, I don't know if that's a fair comparison because Adventure was starting off with 1 evolution every episode.
Yeah, they were going
right away. Right. This is one of the delayed evolution series overall too. But yeah, it is glaring that we actually got all the way to switching endings, and it took after that.
And the precedent there is with a much larger cast where they need to cram them all in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't compare Adventure in particular. I think it is definitely sticking out. I don't know if Adventure is the right bar to use for it.
Yeah, it's not exactly a fair comparison, but it did just make me realize how weird the contrast is.
Well, I mean, the joke about things happening in the 13th episode because that's the first core, when the first core ends. So it's either 13 or it's sometime around 13. So we are officially in the second core because we switched endings.
Good old 12 episode animes. I don't think I've watched one since 2009.
Yeah. I mean, there's been no anime since Madoka Magica. That's the only show that's ever heard. That deconstructed Magical Girl anime.
Oh my god.
It created Magical Girl anime.
Okay.
It destroyed Magical
Girl
anime.
I thought that was 13. I was thinking of Night Wizard, okay, when I think of 12 episode anime.
I don't even know what you're talking.
Good. It's not a good anime.
Oh, also, I think I need to correct something on the record that I know it was spelled Mephistopheles, but it wasn't a reference to that. I think this character was actually a reference to the famous character Mr. Mistopheles from the hit musical turned movie Cats.
I'm gonna cough up a hairball.
I mean, he's a young black and white tuxedo cat with magical powers that he cannot yet fully control. This Digimon to a T. He has a conjuring turn. Yep.
And here I thought that this was just based on Balan Wonderworld.
Oh my god.
Madoka was 12 episodes. I was wrong.
I have to say, this is a little tiny detail I liked, but when Duty's friend obviously has something she really wants to go to the fortune teller about, but it's also clearly too embarrassing for her to tell her friends what it is. But her friends pick up on something that must be really important to her, so that's why they both all unanimously decide that she should go first.
That was really cute.
That was really cute.
Yeah, I forgot that that didn't pay off. We don't know what it is.
Yeah. Well, the whole episode itself was they were talking about the fact that Ludi has her own secrets, but they need to wait until she's ready to it's the right time for her to open up about it.
Yeah, it just ties into the point I started making before and got sidetracked on that I did not love how it seemed Willy was avoiding turning her digital field on because she didn't want to disappear to her friends, but then she decides to do it anyway, and then Angoramon's I knew you would do this. Okay, and now I'm evolving. It's what? That was the emotional climax? I knew you would hit the button that we always hit every episode. At least nothing was as episode 12 with the Weedmon and the whole how can we solve this crisis? How can we solve this crisis? What if we hit the button? Nothing was that bad. So
yeah, at least there's a very obvious motive of why not, which is that her friends are literally right in front of her.
Right. Even though they did kind of discard that, and then but I liked the resolution. Right.
Yeah.
They're okay, we know she's a secret. We're not gonna force it out of her.
Yeah.
When in doubt, hit the button.
Yeah. That just reminds me of the I think it was originally a Twilight Zone story that got turned into a movie.
Oh yeah. I know this one.
Yeah, if you could press a button and get $1 million, but a person you don't know somewhere else in the world dies, and for decades that was a crazy thought experiment until the pandemic, when probably 50% of America hit the button.
If you watch the original episode, it's supposed to be a commentary about what happens when poverty pushes you to desperation. But I think a lot of people kind of missed that part.
Interesting.
Because, they were pushed to desperation because they were, about to get evicted.
Oh, yeah, I don't think I've ever actually seen...
Yeah, if you've seen the episode, it was actually, pointing out that, this is what happens when poverty drives you to the limit. So it is fairly anti-capitalistic as a thing. It's just, everybody missed that part and went straight to, weird morals. And that's how it went down in pop culture.
That is the kind of thing that tends to get lost in adaptation. I wonder why. We'll never know the answer.
Well, speaking of eating capitalist pigs, episode 16, The Man-Eater's Forest. This was an episode of Laid Back Camp that got, scheduled as a Digimon episode for some reason. Hiro brings Angormon. That'd be weird. Hiro brings Gammamon for his solo camping the fact that it's solo camping in winter, I'm this is just Laid Back Camp. it's a little creepy how similar it is, but it's a real activity people do, so it's not like it was entirely based on an anime and manga.
Look, he's hitting all the right points, okay? So a close loved one died, so he takes the child fishing.
He did mention like earlier that he likes doing solo camping. So
yeah,
that is his hobby. I do find it interesting that like my friend was like having a cow about this, like not about the episode, but at Hito, but was having a cow at Hito for the fact that like one of the first things you learn when you go into the wilderness is you need to let people know you're going, and he doesn't let anybody know, to the point where like Rudy thinks he's ghosting her, and he not only does he not let anybody know, but yeah, he just goes in the middle of nowhere. He doesn't tell anybody about it. He's going all by himself at his age. It was before, apparently, he used to go with his dad, but now he's going completely by himself. And I guess because his dad's out of the picture, and because before he met Rudy and Kyoshiro, his only friend was Nomura, who I don't think was very close with them, he is just in the habit of just going off to do things like this without telling anybody.
Which it makes sense
Yeah.
with that history, but I mean...
Man...
that's depressing to frame it that way.
Hiro is on track to grow up to be Ron Swanson.
Yeah, the only difference between this and an episode of Laidback Camp is that in Laidback Camp, they want to preserve camping as being this amazing magical experience that you can too do if you go to these camping stores and these camping spots and pay money to these real life places that we're totally not being funded by. And so they always paint it as like, there's tons of cell reception. You can still post on Instagram, chat with your friends while you're camping. But it was nice that they all went out of the way to find him. And I loved the scene of Kyoshiro not wanting to open Hiro's door, but then Jellymon doing it anyway. And it's like, the dynamics of these two is like so predictable, but it hasn't gotten old with me yet at all.
Every time.
You need somebody to do all the dirty work that senpai's not gonna.
It's a little strange. You would think that Jellymon and Gulus would get along better because they're both very practical.
I don't want to elicit fan. I don't want to create it into existence by talking about it too much, but I could see that happening in certain shipping circles.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
But one thing I thought was cool is that I did not, until this episode aired, I had never looked up what Jureimon's name meant in Japanese, what the Jurei meant.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I already knew it from Shin Megami Tensei. Oh.
So for people who aren't aware, it means both old age and a tree's age. So that is exactly why his whole character in this episode is he's an old man and very proud of his age and very proud of his tree rings. Yeah, they really went back to his name and based all that lore around him.
And in this episode, he's being played as one of the demon trees in Japanese mythology.
It eats people.
Yeah, what are they? Juboko, I think.
Oh.
Which I think they make the same Jurei pun at one point in one of the Devil Summoner games. But it's been a while.
Also, it was cool that they had two different, we saw Jureimon in the teaser and assumed it was just going to be a Jureimon episode, but then it was kind of a fake out with another Mori Shellmon.
Yeah.
I did not know existed.
Attack of the Recolors.
It's interesting because Mori Shellmon is clearly like a little closer to Gulus's ideology, but at the same time not as terrifying.
Yeah. It was when BattleGammon is like being held by Jureimon and Mori Shellmon's like, nope, I'm not going to help. I was like, oh, okay. This guy is not good.
And it's because, like, you can attribute that cynicism to also being, like, a selfish jerk-ass a little bit. Whereas with, like, Gulus, you just, like, really just... The implications of where all of this come from are very scary.
Yeah, I think the fact that Mori Shellmon is both, like, protecting humans, but for his own benefit, but also, like, still being protective, but also manipulative, but also protective. Like, it's an interesting mix of morality.
Yeah, his own self comes first, basically.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a bigger franchise-wide illusion in this episode with using Mori Shellmon because, well, when I see him, I think of the random encounters in Digimon World 1 in the Misty Woods that show up, which Mori Shellmon is really annoying to avoid because his movement pattern, he tends to just catch you as you're running into a screen. But he appears in the same area as Jureimon in that game.
Oh.
And it's this fog-infested forest that Jureimon in that game has made all of the fog to make it impassable, and you have to locate him in the forest to get the fog cleared. Or no, you first need a magic spell cast on you by Tono-sama Gekkomon to get through the fog, and then the fog will clear after you talk to him.
And for people who aren't aware, Mori just means forest. So he's just...
Forest Shellmon.
Yeah.
He's a Shellmon in the forest.
Actually, in The Legend of Zelda, the Moblins, it's an abbreviation of Mori Goblin, Forest Goblin.
Oh, did not know that. That's almost as shocking as Chozo in Metroid just being bird statue.
And Hiro and friends were a little more like proactive this time. They actually burned an arm off. Like they didn't kill. And I do appreciate one of the complaints I have when people are like saying that Hito and friends need to do more is everybody constantly says that they need to kill. Like they always go like straight to, the kids should be killing them. And I do appreciate the fact that there is such thing as a middle ground, but wow. Hey, chopping off an arm is not something they would have done in earlier episodes.
Oh, we've made progress. He's maiming people now.
So yeah, I think it's this to me, like compared to other reasons that they've gotten, like this one felt like getting the villain to leave felt the most satisfyingly explained in narrative of the episode itself, because it's like he has this arrogance and not hubris, but pride in his body, I guess, in his tree rings. And so like hurting something that like takes away part of that pride would, I think, make the Digimon retreat, and they barely scrape by. So like I definitely got the sense from the end that they're like, okay, we barely got by, but at least we're okay for today.
For another 50 years or so.
Yeah, well, that's if it takes that much longer for him to attack without me teaming up with other Digimon. And
but this is the first time they are very clearly and obviously like verbally bringing up the question of like how pacifist are we going to be about this has actually like shown up as a question, which basically confirms that yes, they were actually going somewhere with this.
Yeah, which I love. I mean, I feel like I really liked the pacifist like discussion stuff of 02 is a contention point in a lot of people's watch of 02, but I always thought that it was a great idea that only came off awkwardly because it was never addressed in Adventure.
Right.
And so like addressing it from the beginning, it's a cool thing to bring into play.
And like it wasn't addressed in Adventure mainly because it was very blatantly obvious they had no choice.
Right.
Like,
they didn't need
to. And like even in the relevant episode of 02 before they start that arc, they have a whole scene with like Taichi like sitting Hikari down, and they're both talking about the fact that like they're accustomed to it, but at some point like those other four are going to have to accept it soon, and it's not going to be pretty. So they actually have like a conversation about this, about like the differences in mentality between the two groups. But I think a lot of people tend to forget that scene existed. But
I mean, I think people remember that scene, but I still feel like inherent in framing it as like as a viewing experience when you just watched 50 episodes of that never being questioned, like you internally think of it as like not even a moral question.
Yeah.
So then when they start raising it as a moral question, you're like, I've moved over this. Like, why are you bringing it up?
Right.
And so like, yeah, it's one of those weird things where it's like I can't actually blame the narrative, but also like if enough people this is kind of a attitude I take from like user experience, that like if enough users have the same complaint, then like there's probably a reason that they're having that complaint.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's because they're misinformed when it comes to fandom and misinformation circling in fandom, but a lot of times if everyone has a similar complaint, there's a reason they have the complaint.
Yeah.
Although they don't always know what the reason is themselves.
Yeah. There's a lot of articulating the wrong reason.
Yeah. This series is in a very weird position because it is because the thing is, how pacifist every series has always actually really depended more on framing than it actually has depended on like the degree of violence or how much they like, whether they actually went to a kill. Like when I was saying, like, I'm a little frustrated how everybody keeps saying these kids should be killing their enemies. I mean, previous series didn't always end in killing them, but they were definitely beating them up really hard, at least, And then here we have a fairly outlier series in terms of them like literally going for like the most pacifistic possible solution at every count. Is difficult to get used to.
Yeah.
Right. Well, right now this series has two major threads running through it. First is the characters slowly sliding more and more into violence and easing into this and coming to, I think, confront the issues that GulusGammamon's existence presents. And the second is all of these villains building up in the background. And I've criticized the series before on this podcast for like the lack of direction, that there isn't a unifying villain. But like you were saying earlier, Jeff, with everybody piling up like a series of unfinished tasks, like now it feels as if there is a direction, even though there isn't a unifying arc villain to it.
Because, when people talk about what narrative conflict is, people generally go for the one character versus another character kind of conflict, but there are many different ways you can have conflict in a story. In this case, you could almost say, like, in some sense, the conflict is with themselves because their own approach is not working.
Yeah, like there's definitely like I guess I continue to see frustration through these 4 episodes of like, when's the real plot going to kick into gear, aside from obviously execution. I think everyone unilaterally loved that and thought that it was like things kicking into gear, and then since then I've been kind of like, okay, but where's the real plot? And it's like I feel like the real plot is in the character journeys that we've been seeing, and they're like having to slowly accept these things, having to deal with the fallout, like Gammon's emotional fallout and those kind of things. And it's not the like, okay, we beat Devimon, now we beat Edamon, now we beat Myotismon kind of narrative. It's a character narrative instead. I don't know.
Like, and I think it's, it's possible for a conflict to be more abstract, is kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Incidentally, because of that more abstracted narrative, I don't think we've had any filler episodes in this series so far. Like, there's nothing to me that stands out as skippable, because even the weakest episodes that we've seen have something that seems to be coming back later, that's being foreshadowed to return later. Whereas, like, Adventure 2020, I feel like most of it could have been skipped.
Yeah. Which I think might have been the intent, if I'm being generous. That like, if you know the source material, you could just jump in at any point. When I say source material, I mean the OG adventure. Like, oh, these characters, they're in some wacky scenario this week. I don't know, but I guess I've kind of wondered, like, for people like who want the big plot to kick into gear and like, okay, like when are we getting to the real stuff? Because at this point, I think it'd be interesting to look at where we compare to other seasons at episode 16. So in Adventure, that was Skullgrammon's debut. 02 was Submarimon's debut, which I think 02 is a little bit of an outlier in that the Emperor Kaiser arc kind of started off with the ball running.
Yeah, it was already the big plot from day one.
02 is also an outlier in that its entire first arc actually spans over a full half a series and not just one core. So
yeah, oddly. Tamers was the camping field trip episode, so there's a camping similarity there.
Yeah, so that's actually another similarity in that, like, in Tamers, I don't think whatever conflict was going on was very clear by that point.
Yeah, like, I think I guess, actually, now that you pointed out, like, the Devas were a kind of formula that I could see working in this series where, like, there are episodic threats each week, and like there's a hint that they're tied together somehow, but like you don't know how or why, so you can still maintain the like I think what's important for this series is to maintain the kind of like, oh, it's a spooky thing happening around you kind of vibe. And I don't know how you do that while still having like an arc-wide baddie, unless they're like manipulating things behind the scenes.
I think especially when you want to draw comparisons to Adventure Through Frontier, which is like the first four that like most people have like as a childhood memory, and that like it's almost considered like almost everybody that fan knows those four, if other than maybe not so much later ones, but like Adventure Through Frontier at least. If you want to like evaluate things based on like what we were at this episode, you have to kind of remember what it was like to not know the rest of it. Because we can talk about Tamers in terms of the first arc, in terms of what we all know, what came later. But yeah, if you are going to compare it at this point in Tamers, you may not actually really know what the main like point is going to be, because it's not clear.
And with Tamers, like, they do this kind of sleight of hand shuffling around of the characters, because early on it seems as if Hypnos is gearing up to be the big antagonist, but they actually don't know that much about what's going on in the like cosmology of their world. And so when you have like a type of scene where like you cut to the villain looking into their crystal ball, Hypnos is the equivalent of that for that series, at least for the first part, where you don't have the big plot. And whereas in Adventure, that's like, for the first 13 episodes, it's like Devimon talking to his lieutenants, hanging out at his creepy little castle temple thing. This series doesn't have the like villain staring in the crystal ball observing the protagonist sort of scene. It doesn't have that type of storytelling going on. But it makes sense that it doesn't, because the horror vibe you were talking about, Jeff, like that's the container for the episodes, essentially, the framework of how a plot goes week to week. And I guess as it goes on, if we do get like a stronger, more all throughout villain, we might see those horror elements dialed back a bit, or we might see it shift to a different type of horror, like, I don't know, Lovecraft?
We also do have plot elements like the Black Agumon and the Black Tailmon in the background.
Yeah.
So there is something going on there, and that's not just like piling up antagonists. There is something going on back there. We still don't know what it is yet, but we know there is something going on.
Yeah, I guess I'm starting to get worried that like the thing that I see some people clamoring for, like I want the equivalent of, at this point in Saber's Day Squad, they were going into the digital world because like there had been war declared with Marukimon or whatever. And I guess I feel like I don't know if we can kick into that kind of plot while still maintaining the whole like the horror that could be happening around you kind of vibe. So it makes me worried that like there's a certain subset of the fan base that wants a particular thing that we're never going to get, and they're going to keep waiting for it, and it's never going to happen, and they're going to be frustrated the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, this is why, I kind of, when we were talking in our last episode, I was talking about like, what's your definition of when the plot kicks off? Because there's so many different ways you can define that, and you kind of need to consider like which one you are looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the series of this feels the most similar to me in structure is Atmon. And like, I feel like Atmon felt similarly kind of like slow paced.
Atmon was weird because it was a parabolic curve, basically. Like, it started, like, at a less than one slope. Like, at the beginning. But then, like, by the time you were getting to, like, the, like, episode, like, 30, 31, 32, 33, like, the amount it was escalating between each episode was just, like, getting bigger and bigger and bigger until you finally got to, like, the last 6 episodes. And I just, like, I don't even recognize the show anymore.
I mean, the thing that feels closest to Ghost Game for me is Cyber Sleuth, because they're going around solving all of these ghost crimes.
Oh, yeah, that is true, actually.
Walking into creepypastas. And,
Yeah.
you know, I know for a fact that there was at least one person who was playing like 50 hours into Cyber Sleuth being like, man, when's the plot gonna kick in? When are they gonna go to the digital world?
Oh yeah, like I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, like thinking like the thinking like the part where they go to the digital world is where the plot kicks off. It's like
no, the plot kicked off way before it went right over you. You missed it. It was like
you missed it because you were looking for when they go to the digital world as your bar for a plot.
Yeah.
The plot happened when you got like murdered.
In the first 5 minutes?
Yes, in the first 5 minutes of the game. No, the cutscenes are too long for it to be the first 5 minutes. It's like the first 20.
I mean, everyone just forgets that because they blacked out when, what's her name? Kyoko pulled up in a car.
Yeah.
And invited them into the car.
Yeah.
But even comparing it to Atmon's like slower start, like episode 16 was the kind of fairly big Athlete Drive info dump episode. So
yeah,
like I guess I agree. I see the sentiment and feel like, okay, there is things that could make this series feel more significant that could happen soon, and like it'd be nice if that happened, but also
I do appreciate info dump episodes. You know, last time we had an info dump episode in the series, I feel like everybody felt a lot better. So I think we need another one of these.
yeah. Well, I feel like the last info dump episode we had was like about the mechanics of materialization, which no one really cared that much about.
I don't know. I know some people were really bothered by that, actually.
Yeah. And I guess they had teased it. They were like, "Oh, this is gonna make sense eventually," and it was like, "Oh, because there's an episode that's going to explain it." But looking back on it, it's actually weird to think that like I kind of thought in this episode, like in episode 13, seeing Pokemon die, was like he's been around for so long, and then it weirded me out going back and editing our 9 through 12 podcasts, and it's like. No, he's only been around for 4 episodes. Like, he just got introduced in episode 9 and made a strong impression.
They did a really good job. Well, yeah, like kind of getting his presence in your head for a good whole 4 episodes.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really like want the plot to kick into high gear necessarily. All I really just want is GulusGammamon back.
I just want to say, and I feel bad because I'm going to say a really unpopular opinion right now, but I was more sad over Pokemon's death than I was any Leomon death in this entire franchise.
Yeah.
Even though we only knew him for 4 episodes.
Yeah.
I feel like, the only one that comes close is the the big one, which I won't name. Which
yeah.
I think it might be a spoiler for season if you haven't seen it. But if you have seen it, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The one that actually made it into a tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that one is pretty different. And this one, like, it, I don't know, it feels like they're dealing with the repercussions more naturally.
Yeah, because there's still a part of me that really feels like the one that happened, the one that we're referring to happened like 60% for shock value, and I still kind of feel that right now.
I get that.
So it was very. I think like I accepted it normally when I was like 12, but like nowadays I'm like kind of soured a little bit on it. So
yeah, and it makes the setup of it feel a little bit cynical and frustrating because it's like it feels like it's just being set up so that you have the rug put out from under you, and you're like, look how tragic this is, and it's like
that one Leomon death that was a Digimon not technically named Leomon. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yes. I don't actually count that per se, but yes, go ahead.
That one, I think, might outdo Pokemon for me because it didn't feel like it was cheap or being forced in for tradition or for shock value. It felt like, oh yeah, this makes sense that this is happening right now, and I don't like that it's happening. It hurts.
Well, I mean, that one, I only said the Pokemon beat that one out. It would beat everything else out because I didn't count that one.
Yeah.
I know Jeff has complained earlier about how people keep moving the goalposts on that one. I wasn't even counting that one in the first place. If you do count it, that's a different story, but we won't talk about that.
But yeah, we got really invested in this character without really realizing it. Like, I wasn't thinking of Pokemon as my favorite. I mean, he's not, but like, I was not thinking of him as a favorite, is what I'll say. And then now I really feel the like loss of his presence and the fact that he's no longer with the cast.
And it also, the effect that it had, because sometimes it's not even always about the death of the character themselves, but like the effect it has on everybody else. As like Jeff said, it feels a lot more like a very natural progression. Like, we haven't heard from Bakuman in a while, and in 14, Bakuman is apparently taking it really badly by
Yeah.
just like shutting himself in the library.
Yeah, I mean, they said that Bakuman is staying with Hiro, but then at the library all day and goes out at night. So it's like, is he actually staying with Hiro? And like,
Yeah,
what
it's
is
not
going
really,
on with him?
yeah.
I'm worried about that.
He's
Very worried.
out learning necromancy.
Oh no, he's gonna film with Alchemist.
Oh no.
Yeah, he's gonna open the gate, gonna confront truth.
Well, yeah. I mean, the fact that like it's a little bit below, but like we've had almost as many episodes without Pokemon now as we've had with them,
Yeah.
and it feels like they really did a really good job in those 4.5 episodes of making his presence pretty memorable and significant.
It's especially the fact that it's like painful to Gammamon, I think, is why it hits us so hard. Like, you don't want him to go through that.
He doted on Gammamon. He gave him chocolate.
And this is with one of his episodes being entirely devoted to like, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? 20 minutes later, hit the button. And just saying they did a good job considering one of his episodes was wasted.
Just wait, Jeff. Later in the series, it'll be what will we do? Hit the other button. The dark button.
Well, the last note I have about episode 16 is just, I think it's pretty noticeable that everyone had some crazy animation at the end from animator Natoshi Ishida, who has, I think, the most recognizable signature style.
Yeah.
Like, pretty, I guess I would describe it as like things that are like very still and then move really rapidly and lusciously, and like it's a pretty prime example of what people mean when they refer to good Sakuga animation. And it was nice. It was very refreshing, but I also, every time I see it, I'm like, I don't know if this particular animation style is really for me. I think when it's really doing the really exorbitant animations, it feels like things are moving way too fast for me to actually see what's happening. So it's not my favorite, but it does look amazing. People love it, so.
They were bringing that name up even during Adventure 2020.
Yeah. Did feel like there were episodes where it's like, oh, that's the only highlight is some great battle animation.
Should we move on to forward reviews?
Yeah. All right. Forward reviews.
At Bubblegum Tunes said, Execution, Japanese, Fortuneteller, Maneater.
Very good. At Megan German, I'm so sorry. Pokemon, Granny, I'm heartbroken.
Oh, and at Gary Jamon said, GulusGammamon traumatized my girlfriend, who is Megan Jamon. So, yep.
At Drew Softman, boy, that escalated quickly.
At Andy Lucas OE, Sealsjamon Metaphors Adventure 2020.
And then he included a link to a video of Sealsjamon talking about his body count and with an image of Adventure 2020 transposed over Sealsjamon's face. So, yeah, I guess so. And PDX Anime said, time to tackle trauma.
At QB Noyoko, Digimon are terrifying creatures.
At Dak, I keep trying to use the etymology of your username every time I try to say this. I'm so sorry. At Dak and Jackster. Turf Wars, mentally, metaphorically, literally. I love that one, by the way.
At Board Individual said, writers eviscerate Frontier fans. What is this? Oh, no. I honestly, when I first read that, I was like, what do they mean Frontier fans in particular? And it just hit me. And yeah, it's obvious.
At Austin LC23, horrific, wholesome, cool, intriguing.
At Razaruku, don't mention Gulus here.
Too late.
Bad news. And finally, at Doramiko said, storm before the relief. Yeah. Well, moving on to some listener comments and questions. First off, Meg Hannagemon wrote in saying, we had to take a break between episodes 13 and 14 because the emotional roller coaster we were on was too much. It's remarkable how effective episode 13 was with us only knowing Gammamon for such a short time. We honestly thought Granny had passed away too, and Manmon just didn't know, which would have been a more consistent theme and tied the arc together more with Gammamon, but I'm glad we got a happier ending. I needed it. How does GulusGammamon compare to other Dark Evolutions for you? Shine Grandmon is my nostalgic fave, but GulusGammamon now has to take the cake.
I mean, like I said, I really enjoyed the refreshingness of like the fact that we were all expecting the usual berserker, and instead he's very eloquent and talks, and that's actually the scarier part.
I think this one is my favorite of the Dark Evolutions, because like, oh man, even talking about them is spoilers for those series.
Well, okay, I'm just gonna put it this way. You know how, Jeff, you were complaining that like with the Leomon death meme, everyone keeps moving the goalposts to like try and claim that every series did one, even when like the definition of a Leomon keeps getting stretched further and further. That's me and the Dark Evolution concept. Because it doesn't actually really happen the way that like people talk about it. It kind of, to the point, it kind of annoys me. And like, they used to be like, back in the day, people would even say like the series that didn't have them would be proof that like the main character was shallow and not good character development just because they didn't have like a dark evolution. And that was like a take that annoyed me the most, because just like, you guys, no. But so because of that, like I have what is a dark evolution in the first place is a very difficult concept to make. But yeah, generally I think everybody thinks of like berserkers or like, the main protagonists, Digimon rampaging around or turned evil or something of some sort.
Well, I feel like the biggest sign of goalposts having been moved is that a lot of people categorize, I'm actually not sure what the Japanese name is, but Burning Greymon as one of them.
Yeah, Ritamon, yeah.
Like Takuya's beast form, and it's like, I mean, he is a berserker, not able to control in that episode, but like...
That's not a dark evolution.
Yeah, it's not dark or evil or like unintended. It's like just, it's like a Pokemon that was traded to you at too high a level and you need to like level up to use it.
No, but that season's actual dark evolution actually is my other favorite, because it's talking about this without trying to actually spoil it. It reflects, it's really a corrupted evolution that reflects a character's emotional inner turmoil,
right,
and the way that those feelings are turned on them and then against the people that would otherwise be like their confidants, basically.
Right, but then because this isn't the protagonist, nobody ever counts that unless you're Toya. So that's what I mean by like, it feels like the goalposts constantly are getting moved all the time.
I think that one actually was intended as a dark evolution, but it was deliberately not done to the main character. Like, right. That's purposeful.
Right. So that's what I mean. But like, I feel like, whenever people talk about dark evolutions, it's always like moved goalposts. I mean, and the way the series is going, I don't even know if they're even trying to imply that Gulus really should be avoided all the time. They may well come to a resolution where like sometimes it may be necessary to bring out the executioner. But, or ironic I use this word. But yeah, I think I enjoyed the fact that we were all expecting like a berserker. I think because that's the biggest image anybody has. But the fact that he was talking, just the fact that he turned a lot of expectations on how like the trope should normally play out on its head.
Yeah. I hope that Glue Boy comes back. I hope that Hero starts debating him.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I do have a nostalgic place in my heart for Savers, but I feel like this presents one of the most... Actually, the more I think about Savers one, the more I think it doesn't hold up at all. But anyway, like this one presents the most interesting ideas and also feels the most unresolved by the end of its episode. Like in most Dark Evolutions, it's like, by the end of the episode, you're like, okay, that was a unique circumstance that will never happen again because we like know exactly what to avoid now. And in this series, they don't know what to avoid. I mean, you can assume that like letting someone die in front of Gammamon isn't a good idea anymore. But yeah. Like it feels like the threads haven't been tied there, and we're going to see more of GulusGammamon, which is more exciting than any other Dark Evolution.
And like, when everybody was, I said earlier, I really, really hate the fact that like there were people who used to say like if you didn't have a Dark Evolution, you were a shallow character. And like the thing is, in this case, Hito was not the cause of this, and because of that, he doesn't have like a whole like mental breakdown having to reconsider himself for the next episode. In fact, he's the one most interested in meeting him again. Which is, I just think like the fact that like they've changed that concept up so much. Incidentally, I actually saw the Savers one again recently. Mm-hmm. It actually does hold up better than I expected, but the way that like you have it has more to do with like the entire theme of the series than it does the circumstances in a nutshell, which means it doesn't really have as much impact in the immediate case. But that would require me to start going off on a tract about Savers again. And you don't want to hear that from me because I can go on about that series for like 3 hours because of how much I love it. So
it was a good opportunity to make the Savers Yaoi boys punch each other again.
That too.
That's a good name for them, the pair of them. But yeah. Well, next comment from Garyjimon. I think it's safe to say a lot of the series was built on the criticism of Adventure 2020. I'm really hyped they're setting up a moral debate about killing Digimon and exploring the trust in Digimon that have dark evolved. Here's hoping Cherrymon and Dracmon will team up and come back for vengeance. With Hero pulling his punches, I can see more bad guys surviving the team up before a call has to be made. Yeah, I mean, at this point, we've left so many villains or episodic baddies out there that, like, I'm really curious how they're going to come back into play.
The League of Ultimate Evil.
The only thing I would hate, and I mean, I haven't read this book since I was 12, so like maybe it's not as bad as I remember it, but like I remember, the Redwall books, Martin the Warrior. He like goes around having all these conflicts with random, I say people, but they're all animals. And at the end, like my recollection was they left things on like uncertain terms, or like, they weren't friendly. And at the end, they all show up and they're like, we're going to help you, found Redwall or whatever. So I don't want that. I don't want them to show up and be like, Like if Thelismon or someone else comes in and is like, I'm going to destroy Tokyo, and then like Juraimon, Dracmon, Elder Weedmon, if they all come back and they're like, we're going to help you because you let us go, like I would not enjoy that.
I don't know if I would say this is directly in response to Adventure 2020 reboot, because the thing is, that is the one that's the outlier that did a lot of things wrong. And so if this series does a lot of things right, by default, it's going to feel like it's a criticism of Adventure 2020. Like, you know, like we mentioned before, 02 did have a morality debate about killing before. So it's like, it's not an unreasonable point to bring up. It's just that Adventure 2020 was kind of weird, you know?
Yeah, it feels like in my own emotional processing of the series, it feels like a response to Adventure 2020, but like, yeah, I think that logistically and planning wise, it probably wasn't like I definitely don't think they were like, people hated Adventure 2020 for this reason, let's go that direction. Like, it seems like Adventure 2020 like kick-started a renewed interest in the franchise, so I don't think they were like, well, that sucked, let's avoid that.
When it comes to things that kickstarted renewed interest in the franchise, it's the card game. And the thing that, like, so as to whether or not this series is a criticism of 2020, the question for me is actually, how long was this series in pre-production for? Because we're accustomed to anime being developed very rapidly and on a rushed schedule, but like from day one, the Digimon card game in Japan was making bank. Like every single set sold out. Every set had to be reprinted. They had to do multiple shipments of every one of them, and that has not slowed down. So like several months into Adventure 2020, they would have already known that the merchandise sales were enough to justify continuing the series after, I think.
And like the thing is, we knew the number of episodes for Adventure 2020 very early in advance. It was only one episode off, right? Like we knew it so early that we were doubtful that it was a real number. And the thing is, that is a very strange number for a series to have, but it is the perfect number for Ghost Game to fall on the start on the fall season, given the pandemic.
Right. Ghost Game might have been planned as early as like even before episode 1 of Adventure 2020 showed up.
Which is very rare. That doesn't usually happen with this kind of thing, but like because they were thinking in terms of long-term like planning for the future of the franchise, I would not be surprised if Ghost Game has been planned much earlier than any of us think. But anyway, we're speculating.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, Ghost Game's been here the whole time and we just noticed it.
It was behind you the whole time.
Yeah.
Digimon is definitely like this franchise, it does feel as if the writers of each season are watching the previous ones as they air with like drinks in their hands, like, oh, I could do better.
Hey, I mean, like, you know, not this should have been my news of the day, but if you look at the Bandai's most recent reports for overseas sales of Digimon, we are really going up now.
That's right. How did we forget that? You showed that to me the other day.
I know. How did I forget that?
These numbers are absurd.
The numbers are really good. And actually, I am surprised that the biggest uptick is actually on 2021, not 2020. Because 2020 was when the reboot started airing,
right,
when Kizuna came out. Last year, all we really had was the card game.
Now you have the card game, the Vital Bracelet, and we've been running mobile games the whole time. I'm not in touch with those at all.
I'm pretty sure Ghost Game is being funded by the card game.
Yeah.
I have gone from like 2 years ago, Toya describing to me how like hardcore TCG players would do a case split, and they would, get like 3 or 4 people together to split a case and then take all of the same color. And I was like, oh my god, that sounds crazy to me. To like, now I hear people like, oh yeah, I bought a case. Oh, I bought 2 cases. I bought a case. And I'm just like, I don't even blink anymore. So
Digimon TCG players are insane, okay? I want you to know this. Normal TCG players think you're all crazy with the amount of money you spend on the game.
My best friend from school plays Yu-Gi-Oh! And we meet up and we talk about like our respective favorite kids franchises all the time. And they actually like legit, they didn't know anything about Digimon until we started watching Ghost Game together. But like beforehand, when we were meeting up for lunch, like they would like sometimes ask me like, you know what's going on with that Digimon card game? Because every time I go to the card shop for Yu-Gi-Oh! Like I see like a whole like thing in the back. It's doing really well.
Yeah. And if you want to know more about the card game, go to digimoncard.wtf and tell me if that domain name is terrible. Well, next comment from @pdxanime. Definitely a tonal shift in the story after episode 13, which I think the show really needed. All the previous 12 episodes felt like there was no progression, but now there is. I think the cast will start to grow more and understand the weight of their mission. And Goramon continues to be the best character, at least to me, as he acts as the wise guiding center of the group. I'm curious what that new set of dim cards does. My biggest question remains, can Gammamon control his evolutions? Or is it tied to something like emotion or necessity?
They had implications in the last couple episodes that he can't control it. Like, they even said, like, oh, we got red this time. Or, like, I think, like, 12 even had, like, you know, an implication that, like, you know, they weren't sure if we were going to get the one we wanted. Like, it's not like a very structured situation like 02 where you have, like, specific Digimentals. It's like they really don't seem to know. If you read the profiles for Gammon's evolutions, it does seem to imply emotion, because like Betel comes from like cheerful or passionate, and then like Chaos comes from like cool-headed,
and Wizen comes from I'm a Triceratops with guns.
Yeah, Wizen comes from gun, the emotion. When you just feel very gun inside, that's what he is in crystallized form.
You feel like my feet? What are my feet missing? Guns.
So yeah, there was earlier they did have a bit of drama over like you shouldn't evolve Gammamon at all, or he might evolve into Glue Boy again. And it seems like Hero is able to influence the evolution slightly, except for Glue Boy, because he wasn't involved at all in that one. And we actually saw the gauge charge up and then go back to 0, like he was rejected somehow.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And with we got red this time, and the fact that red was exactly what they needed at that moment, it seems like they're gradually getting more control over something that they can't control.
Right.
It is interesting that, like, you would expect, especially for a show like this, that seems like it's taking its time, or, like, focusing more on the character narratives than the bigger, broader plot stuff, that, like, it would seem like a natural point to have an episode or two of Hero being afraid to evolve, and him getting over that fear. So it is an interesting choice that they've made it the other characters who are afraid of it and not Hero.
Yeah.
That feels like a very purposeful choice given how the show is paced, and that they easily could do that.
He wants his baby brother to be himself, and sometimes being yourself means you do drugs.
Okay. Well, we know it's not... he's not doing drugs. Who pointed this out on our Slack? By Slack, I mean Discord.
Yeah, we all work in an office together on our Slack.
Okay. I used to have a Pottage's Slack before Discord came out.
Did you make people wear ties to the podcast too?
Oh my god.
Oh god, where did I write this down? Oh yeah, shout out to Shark Flynn in the Discord who pointed out that Gulus is just so strong because he has the Yu-Gi-Oh card Horn of the Unicorn equipped, and it does look strikingly similar to Gulus's horn. Also, side note, but as we were talking about 02 a little bit, and also Dark Evolutions, I just want to move the goalposts to another continent and say that I don't like Submarimon, so I think that's a Dark Evolution.
You don't like Submarimon. That's one of my favorite armors. I'm going to run you through with this torpedo nose.
I don't mind Submarimon. I was trying to think of the easiest candidate to make the joke.
It's just, yeah, well, he's an outlier, yes.
Lydramon is a Dark Evolution because it's black and makes thunder.
Because it's too cool.
It's like Yamato, so therefore it's a Dark Evolution.
Oh my god.
He's the dark one.
Actually, the name got changed in the dub, so it's a Dark Evolution.
Oh, okay.
Well, sorry, back to the actual question that we were discussing, or the comment. I mean, yeah, I'm curious about the dim cards. It seems like they really could have just been shaking up the environments that the episodes are taking place in, and I would be happy with that, but I'm also open to a possibility that they meant more. But even if it's just new settings for battles, I enjoy that.
The dim cards are a merchandise tie-in to the new Vital Bracelet releases.
It's honestly... I mean, okay, for the episodes we've seen so far in this batch up to 16, it's like, okay, they can work as an advertisement for like, oh, get the ice-themed one. But next episode is titled like what, Icy Hell, and is like them getting stuck in an icy hell. So it's like, buy this icy one, you too can
freeze to death.
Roleplay as if you're dying in the wilderness. I don't know. Well, next question from Andy Lucas OE. What do you think of the parallel between GulusGammamon and Hero's dad wanting to both leave him behind? Was Gulus inspired by the connection between him and Hero? Was Gammamon influenced by Hero's dad? Was he sensing Hero's abandonment issues, feeling like a failure in his dad's eyes? Or was it just a coincidence and I'm overreaching yet again?
I am not entirely sure he really wanted to lead him behind, because like as I pointed out, there are some very subtle like nuances about him favoring Hiro over the other.
Yeah.
He did seem a little sick of him, though. Like, oh, you're not helping me, so I'm just going to leave.
Yeah, you're not helping. But, like, at the same time, yeah, I'm not quite sure it's quite as clear-cut as it looks at first glance.
If Hiro had helped him kill that guy, I think he would have taken Hiro with him to the digital world.
Or something like that.
Actually, you know what? I didn't consider this angle before, but it would make sense if Gulus is just being extremely practical for him to go, okay, hero, you've been wanting to know more about the digital world this whole time. You've been wanting to find your dad. Let's just go and get him.
Yeah.
He's very pragmatic, so I wouldn't put it past him.
But yeah, I mean, I think these are all interesting questions to raise given, like, we have these chess pieces on the board. We don't really know what they're going to resolve, and it feels like they have to lead somewhere.
The idea percolating at the back of my mind is that, so we got a preview of Glue Boy way back in episode 1 with Clockmon when he fast-forwarded Gammamon's time and we saw, like, the shadow of him showing up. And because that was forward, that implies that Gulus was his future, but right now we've been thinking maybe Gulus was his past. Maybe that was what he was before his like latest reincarnation as a Digitama and before he was gifted to Hero. And so the idea that I have right now is that maybe Gammamon has been around for a long time and has reincarnated many times in the digital world and always ends up evolving into the same thing. And Hero gave Gammamon, or Hokuto gave Gammamon to Hero in the hopes that he would evolve into something else, which is actually happening.
Isn't that like kind of the premise of Try? Kind of?
No.
I mean...
No.
I have successfully blocked that out again, so do not remind me.
I know the plot of that series better than I wish I did. I think that's a bit of a stretch.
I feel like there were things that the series was trying to make. There were points at the end that I was like, I don't think I understand what they meant. Razaruku asked, now that we're a decent amount of episodes in, do you think the horror flavoring of the show has chosen to take on has been more of a benefit or a weight? Aside from a few times, I can't personally think of too many times where the horror theming made the episode much better, and often it can feel like a dumb gimmick meant to waste the episode's runtime until we get to the stuff we care about. I understand the show needs a hook and all, but I can't help but wonder.
I mean, I'm enjoying it because for me, it's an establishment of what kind of threat they pose to everyone around them, like eating humans, among other things. I mean, like, I feel like if you don't have something like that, it kind of doesn't feel like they're really threatening.
I'm kind of tired of it, but like, I'm not someone who would normally watch a show that has this kind of theming. I am watching this because it's Digimon. And
Same,
I appreciate, like, okay, they can't not do it at this point because the horror theming is how the character dynamics are structured here. That, like, Kiyoshiro is very superstitious and very afraid. Jellymon teases him over that, and Ruli is more of like a paranormal investigator, so they're on like opposite ends of a spectrum in terms of interest versus fear of the unknown here. And it's a very useful structure in terms of like growing the characters in this way without having an explicit overarching villain or something that is like pressing them for time. It lets them investigate what's going on in each episode and solve it like a puzzle.
And like, we have a interesting portrayal of Digimon in the real world too, where like they all ended up in the real world, but instead of rampaging around randomly, some of them decided like, I can't go home, so I'm just going to try and live the best way I can. So they're sort of trying to blend in with human society a little bit, and that failure to interact is kind of like when there's like differences in thinking is kind of what causes many of the conflicts of the episode, and why you have to like suss out whether they're actually hostile or whether it was just a misunderstanding. So I mean, it's kind of baked into the premise.
Yeah, and I think it like if the like grand arc of the season is really about pacifism and learning to get over pacifism, which feels like that's not really it's not articulating it well, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That like this is the closest we've seen to a season about human and Digimon coexisting. Like Digimon are just like in the human world living their lives, and like you kind of need that setup to make it so that like the idea of just like randomly killing them is like feels so atrocious because they are just living their lives.
Yeah.
Like in Tamers, I think in those early episodes, like Renamon kills Digimon that materialize into the human world, and it's like it feels natural because it's like they're invading, they're appearing, they're out of place, and they're like they shouldn't be here. But here it's like, I mean, no one knows why things are happening at this point, and it just feels like everyone's all kind of learning to live together. But yeah, I think like Toya, I wouldn't normally be watching a horror theme series. Like I watched one episode of Gegege no Kitaro and it was like, yeah, this is fine, but I'm not particularly excited to watch others, and I haven't really watched other yokai things. But I think it's a good flavoring for the series in that it makes it feel unique and different just from the concept alone. And I think that makes it more appealing to people who like are longer running fans who haven't checked in a while. And it's like, you can kind of know what the vibe is from hearing it described.
Yeah, like I think that, I said this the first time we had we had the discussion about like the series. Like once a franchise gets longer and longer and longer and longer, you're gonna need to have more elements that make each series more memorable stick out. You need to have some kind of one conceit or gimmick that defines that one that is different from everything else, instead of just, everything trying to recreate the adventure formula again. So I appreciate the fact that they have a conceit and they're sticking with it.
Yeah, I don't think like, oh, it's Digimon, but this time there are trains would really cut it anymore.
Yeah.
Hey, that season was a Power Rangers season. Come on.
That's the one. Yeah. But then that goes to show you, though, that's the one that like everybody can easily summarize as the one where they actually turned into the Digimon, because that premise sticks out so much that like it was able to identify the whole series that way.
This is the season where Pumpmon tries to murder people.
And I guess like, if you want to talk about subjects like death, you have ghosts.
Yeah, this is probably the easiest way to present the subject matter to children, which it makes me think that probably this season's themes and ideas were drafted first, and then they went to, well, how do we present that? Okay, if we're going to talk about mortality, we have to like soften it. So make it fantastic. Talk about ghosts.
Talk about games, because being a gamer is like death in that you lose your life. I don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like I can see the fan base kind of like getting weary of the spooky concepts each week, and like I sympathize. Hasn't hit me yet.
I mean, I might be weary of it, but at the same time, it's fine if I'm tired of it, because there's already other things keeping me watching. If you get tired of the premise, okay, great. By the time you're tired of it, you already have Glue Boy there. And you have all of these character relations and this cast of villains building up in the background that nobody's doing anything about. And you're like, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap.
Like I said, I watched Nietzsche as a kid's time, and they are like increasingly having to get more and more ridiculous with their themes every year. And there are some times where they have themes that are not my favorite topic ever, but usually I'm watching for something else by that point.
I was gonna point to some Precure seasons as like interesting themes that like have kept me watching regardless of not being that interested in the theme. But then I'm like, oh, but I didn't actually keep up watching long enough to make that claim.
I could not get into the whole like. There's 2 Precure seasons where they're taking care of a baby, right?
It's a trope in Precure. It's multiple things, and I think that actually originally comes from Ojamajo Doremi. So
okay, I definitely couldn't get into that. I remember not getting into that.
Yeah, so like that is a recurring trope with Precure. Actually, funnily enough, one person commented that Frontier at one point does it. But
yeah, but I found that part of Frontier very annoying.
Oh wait, actually, this reminds me that like this is the test. This is the litmus test. We'll know if writers working on Ghost Game actually have recently dealt with a toddler or have a toddler or whatever. Is that if Pokemon comes back as a baby, or if there's some baby involved and Gammamon is obsessed with the baby, that is apparently very realistic 3-year-old behavior to like love baby things, and like, which weirds me out because I'm used to like, I thought that kids at a certain point were like, oh, like I guess I'm thinking more of like 5+-year-olds who are like don't want to be seen as a baby and like hate the idea of babies.
Yeah, that's like older elementary pretty much.
So yeah, if we get a baby and Gammamon is like obsessed with the baby, then that's how we'll know they actually are rating him like a toddler. But yeah, the final question from @KigariJamon: what horror movie setup that hasn't been done yet would you want to see made into an episode before we hopefully change up the game? Stephen King's The Mist would be a horrifying setup for an episode.
I don't know a lot of horror movies.
The Human Centipede.
I am a weakling, so I watch kids shows, and this is kid-friendly horror, so that's why I'm capable of watching it, but I don't actually watch horror movies very much.
I don't actually watch them either. I know of certain horror films through like cultural osmosis.
Yeah.
I've read more horror books, I guess.
I've seen thrillers and like at some point some slashers, but I haven't seen like real horror movies.
This is setting myself up for failure, but I would like maybe if they tried to adapt Dracula somehow, except like in a 30-minute kids show episode, not even 30, like 20 minutes, it wouldn't work because of there's the pop culture version of Dracula, and then there's actually reading that book as like it's told through a series of letters. It's genuinely like kind of scary the way that they present everything. It's not campy, and Dracula comes across as like, oh, this understanding older gentleman that is very nice and hospitable, and then just gradually you see the monstrous elements appear. And also they could never address the broader themes of Dracula because it deals with like colonialism.
I'm Korean, so I know a little bit about like Korean cinema. I obviously don't like watch Korean horror movies all that much, but I do know a little bit about it. Sometimes I wonder wonder if like that's the reason why I prefer psychological horror to like stuff with like lots of blood and stabbing people. But there is a very, like, that kind of thing, there's a very high level of psychological horror to the point where, like, I think it would go over a lot of kids' heads. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't like horror movies either. I mean, I recently I recently did watch all the Scream movies in anticipation of the new Scream movie, and that kind of campy horror is not for me. There are some aspects of it I appreciated, but I don't know, that kind of horror movie I ultimately I'm not the biggest fan of, because it's like a lot of death for no real reason, and it's very like meta and winking at the camera, but also for no real point. Just kind of like, and we're winking at the camera, which means we wink at the camera, which means we wink at the camera. Did you get the we winked at the camera? And it's like, but what are you trying to say? And it's like, the only message in the end is like, sometimes someone murders a lot of people. And I'm like, I don't like that message. So, yeah.
Hey, that was the whole message of Sealsdramon's episode, right?
True, that is true. Yeah. I mean, obviously Get Out would be very fitting for Digimon. Now that's the only thing, that is the kind of, I guess you call it elevated horror that I enjoy, and that would not fit in Digimon season.
Digimon Savers is my favorite adaptation of Get Out.
Ooh. You mean Digimon Propaganda this season?
But also, Savers was written by a guy who like constantly is giving middle fingers to the LDP, so I'm not sure. The fact that the series did have them as part of a government agency, but the government agency was also portrayed as extremely like inefficient and enabling of a lot of like very terrible people just because it was too married to structure is very deliberate.
Yeah, and I mean, Dat sets up the geopolitics problem at the end of, wait, we can't talk. This is huge spoilers.
This is off the record now, but
yeah, this is off the record.
All that is not going in the episode. So I guess that brings us to our closing thoughts for the episode. Before we give it our own ratings, I thought it was interesting to look at the community ratings from Twitter, I've been making this graph of like showing each episode vertically stacked up, and it's kind of hard to see episode 13 because the like 5 stars are as big as the 5 and 4 stars are for any other episode. Like 82% of people voted at 5 stars.
Yep.
Yeah, that happens.
It was a very strong episode.
Yeah. And I guess I agree. I'm going to give episode 13 5 stars. Episode 14 with the Zashiki-Warashi, I guess. I'm torn between 3.5 and 4, because like it was good follow up, but it was a little bit boring. But I'll give it 4. Fortuneteller's Manor, episode 15, I'll give 3.5, and then the Man-Eater Forest, give 4 too. Pretty nice, solid episode.
Yeah. So mine was pretty much exactly the same as Jeff. I actually had a 3.
Yeah.
I had a 3 instead of a 3.5 on episode 15, but I think that's just because I tend to think in whole numbers. So if you give me too many small units, my brain explodes. I'm not very smart.
And now I'm watching Toya Live fill in the same numbers.
Thinking about this. Like, yeah, I feel like I might be right on the same vibe here.
Oh no, is this groupthink? Have we merged our minds?
Okay, so for the very final episode, I did feel like this Doraemon episode was kind of weak-ish. I mean, it was well animated. The premise was interesting, but the execution, I felt like we were kind of meandering through the episode, and I wasn't sure what the point was.
Well, Toya, we need at least one thing each episode that we get into a fight about and have to go into the parking lot and fight it out with fists. So,
I don't know.
what's it going to be?
喧嘩はダメよ.
I'll give episode 16 a 3.
Oh no!
Yep.
Oh my god!
I'm
Oh my
giving it a
god! Oh my
3.
god!
Oh my god! You're more than a 0.5 off. Oh my god!
I'll give it a 3.4. It gets the extra 0.4 for having the Mori Shellmon and Doraemon in it.
I can't make a 4/10 of a star. Okay.
Ghost of the month, right?
Oh yeah, Ghost of the Month. For me, like Black Tailmon did appear, and like I did like her a lot, but she didn't really do anything. And I think this bit of always voting for her is getting a little bit tired. So it's gonna be Glue Boy.
Glue Boy.
Oh no, I just put Gammamon, and I don't like that.
I'm gonna go for that Sunflowermon who wants to wear a kimono in episode 13. I want to know how that would even look.
I mean, if you think about it, that Sunflowermon with the kimono, who wanted a kimono, is the reason that Pokemon died. So
now look what you've done. You don't even have to ask what Toya says, right?
I'm giving it to Glue Boy. I want him to come back and be terrible.
Trash son.
Yes, my trash son. I want him to argue with Hiro a lot.
So where do we think we'll be 4 weeks from now at the end of episode 20?
I think it is kind of established. We have basically understood that the series does want to take its time. I don't think we're going to start seeing like the Sabers or Atmon parabolic curve, but I think we are going to have conquered some territory by the time we get there. What exactly, I'm not entirely sure, but we'll probably have a little more exploration on the stance of pacifism at the very least.
I'm thinking that next week, everybody is going to come very close to freezing to death until they discover that Kiyoshiro is already dead and has been dead since long before the series started.
Okay.
I mean, I think he's gonna save everyone when he reveals his he's not covering his eye. He's gonna reveal his hand and it's gonna be on fire.
He's going to get over his fear of ghosts by discovering that he is the ghost.
Oh, okay. No. Also, wait, I didn't mention this in the Zashiki-Warashi episode, but like he wears his Chuni like edgelord cape to his academic conference. Like, oh my god, he'd make me roll my eyes in person so much.
As someone who has had to frequent these academic conferences way too many times, they are basically anime conventions. Like, I have seen people in the stupidest outfits practically cosplaying to their presentation to talk about Street Fighter and A Tale of Two Brothers.
Oh, I think in 4 weeks, I think we might get glimpses of a mastermind in the sense of like more so than Black Agumon just staring, but like someone who actually is doing like a looking at the crystal ball kind of thing, that like a bit more sinister, but maybe just those glimpses. And if I'm swinging for the fences, maybe the beginning of a very, very short digital world arc just to find Hokuto.
Oh, I hope so.
I'm thinking like maybe 3 episodes max and maybe the early signs of that, but that also seems... Expecting that within 4 episodes seems like a bit of a...
Yeah.
It seems like a big stretch, but also like at episode 12, I don't think I would have expected episode 13 to happen, so...
Sometimes they will have a little swerve as a treat.
Yep. Just like Sister Mon Shiel on her go-kart.
That was a hell of a swerve. That was drifting straight into hell.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, all right, that brings us to the end of the show. Last month's Digiprompt was in honor of Repamon's battle with their own tail. What Digimon would you want to reimagine as having 2 distinct personalities, and what would the 2 sides bicker about? And my favorite response was from @Gigarigimon, who said, Megagimon and Gigagimon are tied to the tail and both want to go to different restaurants for dinner. Hilarity ensues. And I agree, that's very relatable. Although, if it were me, it'd be more like not being able to pick not even being able to think of a restaurant for dinner. But Toya, you had one you want to read, right?
Yeah, my favorite one came from Andy Lucas OE, who said, Deltamon appears in the woods and people hear 2 voices arguing with each other about the most inconsequential things. Hiro finds Deltamon talking through his hands like sock puppets about his decision to come to the real world. It would be great, you said. Oh no, I did not.
I love it.
And I think you picked this one just because they included a Digimon World GIF.
No, that's actually Digimon World 2. I don't like that one.
Oh, okay.
Side note, there was somebody asking, like, what Digimon game should I play? And, like, I heard all the good ones were Digimon World 3, Cyber Sleuth, and Dawn Dusk. And I'm sitting here like, other than Cyber Sleuth, the only people who would say that the other two are any good are Digimon fans who don't know what video games are.
Do you want to be afraid to walk? Because that is what Dawn and Dusk will do to you.
God. Those are not good games. They're okay Digimon games, maybe, but they're not good games.
They have cool ideas. They have really cool ideas and cute graphics.
I am begging you, do not play that as your first Digimon game.
Even the Dawn and Dusk?
No!
Even, like, Digimon World DS is archaic, but I think it would be a better starting point than Dawn and Dusk.
Yeah.
AKA Digimon Story 1.
Well, this month's Digiprompt is, you're put in charge of planning a new season of Digimon. What pre-existing Digimon would you use as the first major arc villain early on, and how would they lead into the season's actual big bad? Send any feedback to podages@email.com, to podages on Twitter, or in the episode comments on podages.com. Check out the show notes to find a link to join our Discord server and continue the conversation, and share the podcast with your friends who will transport you into an episode of Laid Back Camp to try to help you cope with your trauma. If this is your first episode, you can also find us on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever else you find podcasts. Okay, let's go around and share where people can find us on the internet.
I am @ListGL on Twitter.
I am @Kawilia on Twitter and @Maniacs Channel on YouTube.
And I am definitely Jeff on Twitter. And maybe by the time this episode comes out, I will have launched a Digimon card game rulings database at digimoncard.wtf, or maybe I'll have chosen a better domain name by then, I don't know. But thank you everyone for listening, and we'll be back in 4 weeks to talk about episodes 17 through 20. Bye!
Bye!
And remember, never stop Digivolving.
Gotta go back to the Digi world, 'cause Digimon don't get scared. It's spooky, 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 it's
Wait, okay, so the frontier character that you're referring to, Toya, is it the one that starts with a cha or a ka or a da?
You can cut this out. It's Koichi, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Wait, the other ones were... Oh, you're thinking of the TV Forest episode 1 and...
Oh, no, I was thinking of Trubimon, which then I realized also could have been a ka or a cha.
Oh, okay.
Kerubimon.
I was like, wait, Chakmon? Why would... Oh, when he thought they were all bullies. I never thought of that as a dark evolution. Jeff, you're really next level here.
Oh my god.
I've moved the goalposts so far, they're in a completely different town.
Yeah, you are next generation. This is like a Reddit post from 2040.